Like the other visitors, when I entered Mount Pagoda, also known as D Pagoda, one of the most famous temples in the Mekong Delta, I followed the crowd heading straight toward the ancient garden within the temple grounds to see the bats. I must admit, the bat garden was an extraordinary sight, with thousands of enormous bats hanging densely from the treetops. Regardless of how the wind blew and made the trees sway, and regardless of the lively laughter and chatter from the people below, the bats continued sleeping peacefully, regaining their strength after a long night of foraging. This temple was the safest home they had. After visiting the bats, I sat down to rest in the covered veranda of the temple's main hall. On the steps, a fashionably dressed woman and a man were busily preparing a very large offering tray. It contained paper money, a boiled chicken with a flower in its beak, and, most notably, a large papier-mâché pig that looked almost lifelike. In the past, I had seen people make paper offerings in the shapes of human figures, horses, dragons, vehicles, airplanes, rockets, and so on, but I had never seen a paper offering made in the shape of a pig. Curious, I followed the man and woman around to the back of Mount Pagoda's main hall. They placed the offering tray in front of a grave. I was genuinely surprised to discover that behind the temple there were not the usual stupas containing the relics of former abbots, but rows of graves, each with a tombstone. Even stranger, each tombstone bore a picture of a very large, healthy-looking pig with beautiful pinkish-white skin. Some graves were inscribed with names such as Mrs. Hoy, Mr. Hoy, and Year of the Pig. After the woman had knelt and prayed fervently for quite some time, she instructed the man to burn the paper offerings. I walked over to strike up a conversation and find out what was going on. He was quite open and told me that he was the younger brother of the woman's husband. His older brother and sister-in-law owned one of the largest slaughterhouses in St. City. Every day, their slaughterhouse slaughtered several dozen pigs. The couple were ethnic kin who had migrated from northern Vienna. They were non-believers and paid no attention to stories told by the local Khmer people about pigs with 5 hooves or 3 legs. Their slaughterhouse had 7 workers. They began slaughtering pigs at 3 in the morning, and by 5 o'clock the meat had already been separated from the bones so that traders could come and transport it away. Usually, the owner assigned the work to the head of the slaughtering team the previous afternoon, and the workers simply carried everything out themselves. At 5 in the morning, the husband and wife would drive over to supervise the distribution and make sure the meat was delivered to the various dealers who came to collect it. However, on that particular day, when the couple arrived, not a single pig had been slaughtered. The workers were sitting around smoking traditional pipe tobacco and drinking tea while waiting for their bosses to arrive. When the owner asked why no work had been done, 2 Khmer slaughterers explained that 2 of the pigs had already become supernatural beings. They believed these pigs were actually humans who had been transformed into pigs, and therefore they dared not slaughter them. It turned out that among the pigs waiting to be slaughtered were 2 animals that local people called five-hoofed pigs and 3-legged pigs. The kin workers did not understand what the fuss was about, but the 2 Khmer slaughterers, who came from VC district, were terrified. The 2 men even burned incense at the entrance to the pig pen and repeatedly prayed. Seeing this, the other workers became frightened as well. None of them dared to slaughter the pigs, so they agreed to wait for the owners to come and deal with the situation. Extremely angry, the owner ordered one of the slaughterers to bring him a wooden mallet. He then told the workers to drag the 2 pigs that had frightened them, one after another, onto the slaughtering table. The man had been a butcher for many years and was highly skilled at slaughtering pigs. Despite his wife's attempts to stop him, he raised the mallet and struck one of the pigs with a loud blow. The animal's mouth opened and its body went limp. Grabbing its ear with his left hand, he used his right hand to make a quick incision. The butcher's knife pierced the pig's neck, and blood poured heavily into the basin. The other supernatural pig suffered the same fate. To prevent the workers from becoming frightened, the owner personally shaved the pig's hair. In no time, the meat had been separated from the bones. After finishing the slaughter, he said, "See, it's a pig, not a human." Seeing how fearless their boss was, the other workers were no longer afraid. But the 2 Khmer workers were still deathly pale, their hands and legs trembling uncontrollably. The pig slaughter would have been no different from countless other slaughterings if it had not been followed by a terrifying event involving the owner. That very morning, after slaughtering the 5-hoofed pig and the 3-legged pig, the husband and wife were riding home on a motorcycle when a truck traveling in the opposite direction crashed directly into them. The impact sent both of them flying onto the sidewalk. Strangely, the wife was completely unharmed, without even a scratch. But the husband was knocked unconscious, with blood scattered everywhere. That same day, all of the workers quit. None of them dared to work at that slaughterhouse anymore. The slaughterhouse closed its doors after that. The owner remained hospitalized for 2 full years. He spent billions of Vietnamese dong on medical treatment before he was finally able to walk again, and even then he could only limp. 7 years have passed since the incident, but the slaughterhouse owner's wife and husband are still terrified by what happened. From that time onward, on every full moon day, the wife has prepared offerings, burned incense, and worshipped at the pig cemetery inside Mount Pagoda. She even asked the temple to bring the spirits of the 2 supernatural pigs that her husband had killed to the temple so that they could be worshipped there, with incense and offerings, in the hope that the spirits of the 2 pigs would forgive her husband. After hearing this horrifying story about the slaughterhouse owner being punished by the supernatural pigs, I entered the main hall to meet the temple's abbot. However, on that day, Venerable Kr, the abbot of Mount Pagoda, was away. Only Assistant Monk TL was at the temple receiving visitors. Assistant Monk TL told me that there were many frightening stories circulating about 5-hoofed and 3-legged pigs. The belief originated from a spiritual concept among the Khmer people concerning unusually formed pigs. The Khmer believe that pigs with 5 hooves, 5 toenails instead of the usual 4, or 3-legged pigs, with 1 black-hoofed leg and 1 white-hoofed leg, are actually the spirits of deceased humans that have transformed into pigs. There are also rumors that if a family happens to raise such a pig, misfortune and conflict will befall the household. And if the pig is killed, the person who kills it, and sometimes even the entire family, will have to pay with their lives. If a household owns such a pig, nobody will buy it if they try to sell it. Nobody even dares to accept it for free. The family is said to have no choice but to raise it until it dies and then bury it carefully. Only then might they escape disaster. Assistant Monk TL told me that 10 years earlier, right in Mahatup village, next to Mount Pagoda, a man was sitting and fishing when he saw a large, fat pig slowly approaching him. The pig had a silver bracelet around one of its legs. At a glance, the man realized that it was a 5-hoofed pig, an abnormal animal whose owner had put a silver bracelet around its leg before releasing it to roam freely. The pig simply wandered around looking for food. The man was a non-believer and, at the time, was poor and hungry. So he led the pig home and slaughtered it. Unable to eat all the meat, he took the rest to the market to sell. Nobody knew that it was meat from a 5-hoofed pig. Yet, for some unexplained reason, throughout the entire market that day, not a single person approached his stall to ask about buying the pork. That very night, the man suddenly became dazed. His eyes changed from dull and vacant to wild and irrational, and he eventually became completely insane. Conflict broke out constantly between him, his wife, and their children. They fought and quarreled all the time. After living in a state of insanity for some time, the man collapsed and died. After that incident, whenever villagers saw a 5-hoofed or 3-legged pig walking along the road, they would respectfully clasp their hands and bow in reverence. An elderly Buddhist woman who helped clean Mount Pagoda also told a story that was no less terrifying. 7 years ago, a slaughterhouse owner brought the body of a pig to the temple shortly after it had been slaughtered. Blood was still flowing from the body. The slaughterhouse owner and his family wept and prostrated themselves, begging the temple to help dispel their misfortune because they had accidentally purchased and killed a 5-hoofed pig. Apparently, the slaughterhouse workers had not noticed anything unusual. It was only after they had cut the pig's throat and begun removing its hair that they examined its feet and discovered that it had 5 hooves instead of the usual 4. The temple performed a ritual to help resolve the situation. The man also built a proper grave and buried the pig respectfully. But even so, he could not escape what people believe to be the supernatural pig's revenge. He is now mentally disturbed and spends his days wandering around St. City.